Hey, this is Chuck Marshall with Wani, and I'm talking to Marty Friedman. Marty, how you doing, man?
How you doing, Chuck?
I'm doing good, man. Hey,
Right.
your new double live album called One Bad M.F. Live is coming out on October 19th.
Yes.
I read that you were inspired by live albums that you listened to as a kid. Which live albums, when you were growing up, had the most like immediate and lasting impact on you?
So many of them. I would definitely prefer the live albums when I was in my young teens. Even though I'd get the studio albums, I enjoyed those too. But live albums were just the shit, man. I loved Kiss Alive, the Ramones Its Alive, Frampton Comes Alive, Blue Oyster Cult, UFO, Foghat. I'm sure I'm missing some stuff. Robin Trower.
Oh yeah,
Um, just live albums were an awesome thing, back then. And I guess they might have fallen out of fashion after that, but at the time, I mean, those were like, especially the Frampton and the Kiss ones, they were like the biggest sellers of anything back then.
yeah.
And I think it's because they make you feel like you're at the concert without seeing it. I guess because video got really popular after that, people wanted to watch the videos of the concerts. But before then, you really had to present it in just the audio format. And boy, it got me, man. It made me want to go to concerts so bad.
So on the new album, you've got a couple of tunes that I think are probably some of your most challenging pieces. You got Inferno and Self Pollution that are back to back. Were those actually played that in that sequence live?
We actually played. Um, Let me see. I'm trying to think of what the set list was. It probably was not, because we cut songs out to make it fit into a 75-minute format. I mean,
Okay.
our live set's 2 hours,
Yeah.
and although it's a double LP, because we just had to have that gatefold LP format.
Right.
It's still only one CD, so we could only really fit about 74 or 5 minutes on there, and so songs got cut out. But it's pretty much in the same order as our show, but things are cut out of it. So I don't remember if we played those two songs together. But once you've been playing any of that stuff on tour, it's not as brutal as it might seem.
Yeah, I was just imagining your band like being in revolt and saying, "No, Marty, no, we're not doing it."
No. My band is like there. I'd be the one revolting about it before they would. That's for sure.
So speaking of you guys as the band, you sound so tight on this recording. It's fantastic. You guys are like just locked in at the hip, especially like on Elixir, Devil Take Tomorrow, and Whiteworm.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious. Do you guys have to? Is there a high level of preparation you guys do before you go on tour to get yourselves, in that kind of mode where you're right in there with each other, or is it because you guys have been playing together so long you just instinctively know?
Well, thanks for saying that. I think we're really super tight, and it's no mistake that it's from the band more than it is for me. And I think the preparation for me is to make sure that what they're doing is going to make it easy for me to do my job, which is to basically be a singer on guitar,
Right.
so to speak. And especially the bass and drums department. On the other guitar, there's a lot of harmonizing and a lot of aggressive rhythm playing. But the bass and drums, the way that they lock is, I think, well, like you said, it's because we've been playing together for a long time. But I think even more, it's because of the way that they play naturally.
Uh-huh.
I mean, they're both very super aggressive players, but firmly into playing. How can I explain this the best? Not overplaying,
Yeah.
and always playing to each other. Like the bass parts and the bass drum parts are probably the most important hidden thing to make any band sound really tight. So the patterns, when there's a pattern going on, the bass and the bass drums, if you were to just solo those things, I remember doing that when we were listening to the tracks. I mean, they're just stupidly locked in there tight. They're not playing outside of each other, and we play pretty much the same thing every night, but the band is really tight in such a fashion that if we were to ad-lib something, even that would be locked up the same way. And
right.
There's plenty of ad-libs on the record, as you heard, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. One of the songs that I love that I think has some of that ad-libbing expression is Dragon Mistress. That song is just so emotional and awesome. Kind of has like a Michael Schenker quality to it.
All right.
So, yeah, I mean, I just thought of that when, in some of those guitar passages kind of sounded Schenker to me.
Thank you very much.
So I was kind of wondering if you could tell me, like, what inspired that song, and then also, what does it feel like to play that live?
That comes from my first solo album, which was like a billion years ago. And at the time, believe it or not, that was like, I was trying to make the poppiest song on the record. Now that I think back to it, it was like a really simple type of groove. And I dropped the guitar to a drop D tuning for it, which back then wasn't really done really at all, hardly. There were probably some guys doing it, but it didn't really become fashionable till much later. And it kind of gives you that heavy sound. And the rest of my first solo album was pretty much all out intensity and mania. So I really wanted to have one song that was kind of a little bit more acceptable for the mainstream, so to speak, as if the mainstream gave a shit about what I was doing anyway. We can always kind of kid ourselves and think that mainstream people might be listening, but that was what I was probably trying to do at the time. But playing it now, it kind of makes me really appreciative that people still care about that record now, and it's just kind of flattering that people care about it and they like that song from that album, and it also gives us a chance to do something different every night. We ad-lib it. Oftentimes we bring a fan from the audience to play.
Seriously? Wow.
Yeah, there's a breakdown where it gets kind of slow and quiet in there.
Yep.
And it's just me playing on the record, but 9 times out of 10, we'll just drag somebody completely random out of the audience and do it. It didn't work out at this show because the audience was kind of far away from the stage, and it was a live record, and we just didn't want anything weird going on. But I'll say, does anybody want to come up on stage and jam? And we have a whole rig set up for them, and we're going to do that when we play. We're going to do this record release show at the Viper Room this month, and we'll definitely be dragging at least one person up here to play with us.
Wow!
And it's a hit and miss. 9 times out of 10, the guys are really good, and we have a lot of fun. But every once in a while, I just choose the most enthusiastic person. When I say that, everybody goes crazy. I look for someone who really, really wants to come up, and maybe 1 out of 10 times somebody wants to come up, and they come up and they don't even know how to play guitar or something. And that's always funny too. But it gives us a chance to stretch out, and I do my little Elvis impersonation at the end, and it's just kind of a fun moment to have on the live record.
Yeah, that's cool. Do you ever have you ever found yourself in that song or another song where you're just kind of so lost in that moment that maybe somebody from the in the band's guy could come over and say, "Hey, Marty, we got to move on"?
No, no. Thankfully, that never happens.
So a couple other great tunes is the Mutation medley and the Ripped medley, where you're throwing in some old songs and some old solos that you've done back in the day, and then adding in some like really killer interpretations of classic riffs. really
Yeah.
liked the Queen in Boston send-offs. Those were
Oh,
awesome.
thanks.
So
That's all Jordan, man.
really?
It's all good.
Oh
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
So I was wondering, have you guys thought of ever doing like a tribute where you guys pick the bands that you loved and did an album like that?
Well, I did like two albums like that, Tokyo Jukebox and Tokyo Jukebox 2, which are all Japanese songs that I did exactly what you said.
Uh-huh.
And the ones that I really, really liked, and I did them my own way. And there's one or two, there's two songs on the live album from the Tokyo Jukebox records, and a lot of people outside of Japan just think it's my songs because they sound like me, but in actuality, I'm covering Japanese, either traditional songs or pop songs, and just kind of doing it my own way with my own sound.
Awesome.
And yeah, so it's especially when you're doing instrumental stuff, it gives you the freedom to and kind of the necessity to do a lot of covers because you want to do things that people are familiar with. And I like to familiarize people who are not in Japan with some of the really awesome melodies that come up in Japanese music. So there's a couple covers, but on the ripped medley, that's completely Jordan's thing. I just said, dude, let's play a couple of things that you like, and he came up with those, and it was just so killer, such a great moment in the concert, and glad we got it on the record.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. Especially the Boston. I'm a huge Boston fan, so that was cool.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. So I read an interview that you did with the Jewish Journal, and I actually learned that you are a Japanese heritage ambassador, which I didn't realize. You've been like for a couple years, I think.
Right.
So what does that role entail for you, and how has it been for you so far?
It's a great honor more than anything else. I'm the only non-Japanese to be appointed such a thing, and what it entails is basically stuff that I would be doing anyway. When I'm outside of Japan, I'll do embassy-related events. I did a big thing with the Japanese embassy in Buenos Aires, Argentina, where they're celebrating 120 years of good relations between Japan and Argentina. And I had my band play, and I did a big press conference and
Cool.
things like that. And I'm doing a lecture at the Japan Foundation in Los Angeles next week. And
Awesome.
and I do things in Japan. I went to Kyoto and did kind of a speech there, and I do events and things in Japan and outside Japan. Basically, just bringing awareness to people who are interested in Japan about what it's really like, and I'd be doing that anyway. So it's just a big honor for me to be officially asked to do that by the government.
But yeah, that's awesome. You've been living in Japan now for I think 15 years.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever think you'll ever come back to the United States, or is Japan your home now?
Well, I come back to America to tour and to visit my family and to do promotion and things like that. So I'm not completely away from the States, but up until I recorded Inferno, I was really away from the U.S. a lot.
Uh-huh.
And I definitely missed it, especially, obviously, family and friends, but I really missed playing for American audiences. And then when I came back to play for Inferno and did that tour, it was just so, I was just so thankful that people supported me despite me being away so long, and came out to the shows and had a great time, and really, started to, get into what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Rather than what they knew me from before, which is all good. But
Right.
there's a lot of new stuff going on now, and this live album kind of like makes a document of what the live show is like in America and outside of America.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, are you going to do another tour upcoming to support this album and your last album, Wall of Sound?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to do that in the middle of January through the end of February, and in the U.S. And we're actually going to announce that tour, I think, around the 19th when the album is released.
Cool.
And we're doing the one special record release concert at the Viper Room.
Yep.
On the 21st, and that's the only U.S. show that we're going to play this year, and then the official tour starts next year.
Cool. Are you going to do, so I thought you were doing some kind of like meet and greet or VIP action. Are you going to do that with the upcoming tour as well?
Probably, yeah. That's become kind of a standard. You meet, you do meet and greet before the show, and oftentimes fans can come and watch sound check, and it's the type of thing that give people what they want. That people seem to want to do that, and I'm more than happy to do that. We got nothing really to hide. It's kind of an interesting thing. The first time I had fans come and watch sound check, it was really weird because I was actually a little bit used to it because I did some events in China and like guitar clinic type of things, and I do the sound check, and there'd be like hundreds of people in the audience while where do these people come from? And it's too complicated to try to get everybody out and then have them come back before the show, so just let it be. But it was a little bit unnerving, but then you just get so used to it that they just all become your friends, and you're ready to sound check and rehearse and write music in front of these people.
That's cool. So Marty, I just got one more question for you. What is your favorite breakfast food?
Oh God, definitely cereal.
Is there do you got a favorite cereal?
Any kind that's like meant for like 7-year-olds, like Captain Crunch,
yes.
But preferably something with even more red dye number 2 and more artificial colors. The crazier,
Fruity Pebbles,
the better. Yeah, all that stuff. And none of that stuff is available in Japan.
Oh, bummer.
So anyone who wants to donate that to the cause will be treated very nicely if you do.
See, now that everyone's going to bring boxes of cereal when you come to the States.
Oh, I have no shame asking for it. They've got no cereal here. I'm like the guy who's always talking about how great everything is in Japan, and believe me, everything is really, really, really great, except they don't have cereal. There's like 3 kinds, and they all suck.
Yeah, because the best part is the cereal milk. You get that. It's awesome.
Yeah. It's not a thing, but that said, Japanese breakfast is about 1 billion times healthier. But when I wake up, I'm not thinking about health. So, so that's one thing. That's the only real downside. If there was a downside about Japan, that would be it. Everything else is just totally amazing.
That's awesome. Well, Marty, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
My pleasure. Hopefully, we'll see you some. Where you're at in LA?
No, I'm over I'm actually in Michigan, over not too far from Detroit.
Oh, well, we'll be there probably early February.
Awesome. Yeah. So I do concert photography too, so I'll try to get it hooked up with that.
Nice. Hope to see you there.
Yeah. Awesome, man.